What is up, YouTube? Welcome back to the channel. Panda here. We are playing some Watcher of Realms. If you can't tell on the screen, we are looking at some loot from Gear Raid 2. We're currently in a Gear Raid 2 event. If you're watching this the day this gets uploaded, you obviously know that. And I wanted to do something that I haven't really done on the channel yet, and that is kind of go through my methodology. Is that it? I think that's the right word. For how I go about looking through my gear and deciding what I'm going to keep and what I'm going to sell. So I'm just going to kind of go through these 49 runs of gear and kind of show you what I'm keeping and what I'm getting rid of. So the first things first I look at is the set. The set is important because at the stage of the game that I am at, I am looking for sets that have good stats. If you're more in the early game, you're looking for just good stats. So you can kind of ignore everything I'm saying of like when it comes to the sets. You don't have to have the sets. If the stats fit, you want to keep that piece of gear. If you're in that early to sort of mid game, I'm sort of towards the end of mid game, in the late, starting to move towards late game in my opinion. You know, I'm getting that 30k on Nightmare 4, and I'm starting to push the 20s and the 21s in the gear raids. So I feel like I'm at that sort of end of mid game to around late game, right? So for me, I'm looking specifically for sets that have good stats. So one of the things that I think is important that I think most of you guys probably already know, but I'm gonna say it here just in case there's a couple people out there that don't. Flat stats on right side gear is just, it's not good. You don't want to keep it. This flat HP is so bad. Flat HP so bad. This piece right here, we've got HP percent. This is a good main stat. And guys, if you're in that early to mid game, you're looking for any mythic, which is this red set right here, any mythic gear that has a good main stat is going to be really good for you. Okay, the substats don't necessarily matter in that early game. Just the main stat is really important. Once you've gotten to the point where you have really good main stats, then you want to start looking for substats. I personally started with going for 2 substats that made sense. For example, with this piece, this is an HP percent main piece, and it has a defense percent and a flat HP secondaries, right? And so because of that, this would be a really good piece if you're in that sort of early mid game, because you want to have a good set with a good main stat and 2 good substats. Now, where I'm at, I'm personally looking for 3 good substats. So this is a piece that I would sell. Then we go down here, flat defense. Now, this is another situation where, guys, this is a defensive set. So I'm not going to keep this attack percent main. Even if it had, like, perfect stats, I'm not going to keep it because, personally, I am looking for stats and sets. But if you guys, again, in the early game, you can kind of forget about that whole set business, right? So here we got flat HP, flat defense, and we're just going to go through and we're going to sell everything that is flat anything. But here we have a decent piece of gear. Now, personally, again, I'm looking for a good set with a good main stat and 3 good secondary stats. So for me, this is a perfect piece of gear. We're looking at a DPS set, right? Curse is a DPS set, increases damage by 6% for up to 5 stacks for every enemy within the attack range. Beautiful. It's a crit damage piece, which is a DPS stat, and it has 3 DPS substats in flat attack, attack percent, and rage regen. So I'm going to go ahead and lock that piece because this could be a potential piece for me to level up later. Now, something to keep in mind is you want to make sure that you have a good assortment of these substats. So, for example, this has no crit rate on it, and crit rate's really important. The reason I'm keeping this is because I have several really, really good left side pieces that have very high crit rate stats. And so it's okay for me to keep this piece even though it doesn't have crit rate. And the same thing will go for whatever it is. You guys know your accounts better than I do, so just keep that in mind as you're choosing your pieces. Again, we're selling anything that is a flat stat. We're not even looking at it. Here we have a DPS set with a DPS main stat, but it has all defensive substats, so we're not going to keep that. Flat, 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 flat. We'll just keep going. Here we go. So this is a DPS piece with a HP percent main stat, and it has some decent substats, right? But again, this is a DPS piece, so I'm personally not going to keep this. And we can keep going, get rid of all of these flat stats. Same thing here with that defense bonus. Again, this is a DPS set. Keep going, keep going. And here we go. So Here is a DPS set with a DPS main stat and 2 DPS substats. So if you're in that mid game, this would be a good piece for you to keep, especially because it does have crit rate. And in the earlier parts of mid game, crit rate is very hard to come by. Now, again, for me personally, I am not going to be keeping this because I'm looking for 3 substats. There's a DPS, or a tank stat, flat. Here is an attack bonus, really good with attack and crit damage, but the other 2 are not DPS stats, so I'm not going to be keeping that. Here we've got attack percent with crit damage and rage regen, but 2 tank stats. This is a DPS set, and it does not have anything good for me there. Now, something to keep in mind, once you are farming the 19s, specifically in Gear Raid 2, Invigoration gear in the early game, you don't even care what the stats are. And the reason I say that is because in this early game, when you're using things such as Volca strats or Laurel strats, a lot of the times you're placing the unit quickly and removing them, which means you can benefit from the 3-piece set even if the substats are bad. So my personal recommendation is I keep about 3 to 5 of these sets, no matter what the substats are, for just random people that I'm going to put into my comp for whatever reason. For example, like if I use Raiden as a Lord, I'm not actually using him as a character, but I could place him to get an Invigoration set on one of my DPS. So something to keep in mind as you're going through these pieces. So here we have an attack percent main with healing effect, HP bonus, and attack. Now, because I don't have a large amount of Invigoration, this is actually a piece I'm going to keep. And the reason is because this is a healing set, right? It has healing effect, it has an attack percent main stat, it has healing effect, and it has flat attack, which means this is actually a pretty decent piece for an attack-based healer. Now, personally, I would really like to see attack speed or rage regen on here because that would make this a really solid piece. But again, I don't have a lot of Invigoration pieces, so I'm going to be keeping that one. Then we go here, we have attack speed, not going to be keeping that. Flat, attack bonus, here's another one. So this has attack speed and flat attack, we're going to be keeping that. I really wish it had healing effect or rage regen, but we'll keep it for now. All right, so here's another good one. So here we have HP bonus with defense bonus, crit rate, attack speed, and attack bonus. So I see this as a good piece because I want to teach you guys something, right? I don't think this is a good piece for someone to keep. And the reason is because the stats are too sporadic. Now, if you are in the early game, this would be a really good piece for you, right? Because it's an HP percent main and it has attack speed. That's perfectly fine when you're, building up your first time sort of HP healers. But for me, or even once you get into sort of the real mid game or towards the late mid game, right? This piece is just not good because it has too much, it's too all over the place, right? You've got HP bonus, defense bonus, attack bonus, then you've got crit rate. So it's just a little all over the place. Even though it has the thumbs up icon, does not mean it's a piece you want to keep. We go into the last one. So this is a piece that I would definitely keep. This is actually one of the better Invigoration pieces I'm going to probably have, assuming it rolls decently. And that's because it is a healing set with an HP main stat, flat HP as a substat, and it also has attack speed and healing effect. So this is definitely a piece that I'm going to keep. Then we can go down to my additional rewards here, and we're back at some DPS sets. So this is a percent HP, percent defense, flat HP. We're not going to keep those. Now, Glacier is a specific type of set, and so this is something where the rules are a little bit out the window here, and that's because this set can be used for 2 different purposes. The first purpose would be for building a tank. For example, my Isolde, right, that 4-star Lord, I built her in a Glacier set. And the reason I did this is because when you get her to A3, she gains attack based on her max HP, which is exactly what Glacier does. She gets 5% of her max HP as attack. So when you combine that with Glacier, you're actually going to be getting 11% of your max HP as attack, which is a pretty large number. And so because of that, because she's a tank, I want to build her with HP percent so that she can survive. But by having this Glacier set with some DPS substats, it's actually a pretty decent piece of gear for someone like an Isolde or potentially an Aurum, right? One that, that new tank that we have. So I'm going to actually keep this piece of gear. Then we go here and we've got, and this is another piece, right? Here's another piece, HP percent, and it has crit damage, attack, and attack speed, which are great DPS stats. It also has healing effect, which is a pretty good tank stat for some people, right? We got another flat. We got a defense percent, but again, this is a DPS piece, so we're not going to keep that. Flat defense. And then we have a rage regen. So this is one of those pieces where I actually keep most of my rage regen pieces, and that's simply because rage regen is very niche, and it could be really, really helpful in certain situations, so I always want to keep a couple on hand in every set. But guys, that's kind of how I go through and I sell my gear. I hope this kind of gave you a little bit of an understanding of sort of how you want to do it. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, go ahead and leave them down in the comment section down below. I'll be glad to respond to them and answer those questions and just have some friendly conversation. I'm always interested in learning how other people handle their gear because everyone's a little bit different. And sometimes you can learn from other people about how they keep their gear or how they sell their gear, etc. and kind of adjust your play style and how you're going to do it. But guys, if you like this video, make sure to hit that thumbs up icon. And if you want to see more content from me in the future, make sure to subscribe and hit that bell notification. And I will see you in the next one. Peace.